So, hey everyone, welcome back again. I hope you're excited about the next phase that we're going to learn that's on prototype, right? And this is going to be definitely one of the most practical and enjoyable sessions of our design thinking journey. So, over the last three sessions, or yes, right, you have built a strong foundation. You started by understanding your users deeply through empathy. Then you defined the real problem instead of jumping to conclusions. After that, you generated multiple solution ideas without judging them too early, right? So today we're going to take the next big step. So I once again welcome you to this session 4, which is technically session 5, right? Because we started with S0 and this is on prototype, right? So our theme, if you can notice, it's called build to think, right? So most people believe we think first and build later. Design thinking, in fact, teaches us the opposite. We often understand our ideas better after we build them. So building is not the end of thinking. It's, in fact, I will call it as it's a part of the entire thinking. So there's a beautiful quote from the Stanford Design School on this slide that you can read. The prototype is not the answer, it's the question, okay, made physical. So think about that for a moment. Okay, a prototype doesn't prove your idea is correct. Instead, it asks your users, is this solving your problem? Does this make sense? Would you actually use it? The answers come from users and not from us. So in the next few minutes, every team will create, two prototypes, right? I suggest that you sit in teams if you're watching, or if you're a solo founder or an aspirational entrepreneur, you can definitely go ahead alone. But otherwise, it'll always be good if you can sit in teams. So first, what will happen is a quick paper prototype that can be built using simple materials, and it's very easy, right? And then you'll create a digital version using AI and Canva. But our goal isn't just to build something that looks good. Our goal is to, finish today very simple one, and that has to be a testable artifact, right? And I'm using the term artifact here. So something which is real, then another, person can interact with and give honest feedback on. So by the end of this session, you will no longer, you can say, be in your imagination. In fact, you're going to realize your imagination. Okay? It will actually exist in the real world and ready to be tested. Okay, so let's begin building, because the best ideas don't stay in our heads, they come alive in our hands. Okay, so far, we have understood our users, defined the real problem, and generated multiple ideas. Now comes the most important part, that is the prototyping part that I'm actually talking about, right? So by the end of this entire session, what you look at the whole agenda, right? We'll begin by understanding what a prototype really is, because many people confuse it with a finished product. Then we'll learn what prototype is, and just as importantly, what it is not. Next, we'll make an important mindset shift. So in design thinking, rough is often better than perfect. Okay. So you'll also learn about 3 levels of prototype fidelity. Okay, it could be low fidelity, medium fidelity, and high fidelity. And discover why companies like IDEO and Stanford Design School recommend starting with simple low fidelity models before investing time and money. Now, before building, we'll map the user journey, identifying the few critical moments that matter most. Then comes the hands-on work. First, you will create a paper prototype, as I already mentioned, using simple materials. And after that, we'll definitely use the AI to generate copy and quickly convert the concept into a polished digital version using Canva, right? So not every idea is actually a mobile app, so we will also explore alternative ways to prototype services, conversations, and physical products, and AI experiences. Some of you might be thinking, when you're watching today, when you have a lot of tools available, you can wipe code and actually come up with a full-fledged design. That's also a good way to present, because AI is giving you that liberty, right? But if you're a novice, you don't know the technicalities behind it, you will not be able to actually relate that what is happening. Okay. So it's always better that there are certain foundations that have actually worked for almost every successful, startup or company. I think let's start from that. Okay. Otherwise, vibe coding is simple and you can learn and you can actually do it. Right. Finally, what will happen is you're definitely going to prepare a three-part testing script. You study a complete, worked example, review a quality checklist, and reflect on today's learning before moving into our next session on user testing, right? So you have to remember this throughout this today's session is ideas become valuable only when someone else can experience them. Okay. Today we are taking that first step. So let's begin with a very simple question. When you hear the word prototype, what comes to your mind, right? For most people, it's almost a finished product, right? A working app, it could be, or a physical model, or something close to, launch. But that's how engineers may actually think. In design thinking language, if you look at the meaning is completely different. Okay. In fact, according to Stanford Design School, a prototype is anything that takes an idea out of your head and puts it into the real world so that another person can experience it and can give you honest feedback. You see, right? So you are actually bringing out the idea from your brain, giving it to the other person. The other person is actually using it and giving you feedback. That's what a prototype actually is mean. So it does not have to work, perfectly. That's what actually it means. It simply has to communicate the idea. So this principle actually comes directly from the Stanford design thinking bootleg. You can go to the net and you just type Stanford design thinking bootleg, boot boot leg, and you will get a complete draft, maybe perhaps of 100 pages, like a booklet, and that's where you will get this whole understanding. Right. And this is one of the world's most widely used design thinking resources. It's freely available. You can download it. Think about companies like, Airbnb, for example. Now, before writing sophisticated software, the founders, simply photographed their own apartment, created a basic, web page and waited to see whether strangers would actually book a room. That simple experiment became proof that people trusted the idea. Now, the prototype wasn't the platform, it was the learning. Similarly, the first version of Dropbox, and this is really interesting, trust me, this was not a working product at all. In fact, the founder, Drew Huston, what he did was he created a short demonstration video explaining how the product would work. You can just Google it and you can get it, I think, 4-minute video, right? And it actually explained what the idea is all about, the complete working model. So what happened was people signed up in large numbers before the software even existed. So the goal was never to impress people, it was to actually validate demand. And there was demand in the technical, fraternity, right? So that's exactly why a good prototype is should be cheap, rough, fast, it should be testable, it should be able to demonstrate what the real problem is that it is solving actually, and it should be disposable. So cheap because you don't want to, waste resources on an untested idea. Secondly, it should not consume enough time. That's also very important. It should be rough because unfinished designs encourage honest criticism instead of, uh, polite praise. That I will say. While until AI was not so advanced, what we see today, when you can get a complete finished digital prototype or you can see the working model, design thinking, this part was definitely relevant. But today, of course, you can wipe code and come up with that, and it can give you a better idea even to demonstrate anybody, right? So fast, why we are saying? Because learning quickly is more valuable than building slowly. Testable because users must be able to interact with it. That's very important. And disposable because if the feedback says your idea is wrong, you should be comfortable changing or even throwing it away. Okay. You have to remember this powerful principle. A prototype is not built to prove you are right. Okay. It is built to discover what you have, what you are, wrong about. Right. That mindset will save enormous time, in fact, money and effort as you build innovative solutions. Now that we have understood, right, what a prototype is, let's remove three of the biggest misconceptions people have when building, one. The first distinction is in fact function. A prototype is a quick, inexpensive, model, right, created to generate feedback. So it's, as I mentioned, it's not a polished product that looks, great, takes, so many days or weeks to actually perfect. Think about the first paper mock-ups of the Apple, iPhone interface, right? Before engineers actually built the software, designers tested navigation using paper screens that people could actually tap and swap. Right. Those paper models answered important usability questions long before coding began. And the second distinction is actually purpose. So first is function and second one is, purpose. A prototype is a learning tool designed to answer one specific question. It's not a presentation meant to convince, people that your idea is already perfect or ready for investment. For example, imagine you have designed an app that helps college students find internships. So instead of asking, "Do you like my app?" ask one focused question such as, "Can students find an internship within 2 minutes without any guidance?" One prototype should answer one important you can say uncertainty. And the third distinction is attitude, right? And this is the hardest one, right? A prototype is something you hand over and quietly observe. The user's reactions are your data. It's not something you explain, defend, or guide people through. So you're not expected to go and constantly keep explaining every feature. Let them use. Okay, so Jacob Nielsen, one of the world's leading usability experts, has repeatedly shown that users reveal the most valuable insights when they interact naturally, without the designer constantly explaining what to do. So, if someone becomes confused, right, resist the temptation to help. That confusion is not a failure. It's actually evidence that your design needs improvement. An IDEO, you can say, it's so IDEO often says, right, fall in love with the problem, not with your solution. Okay, so whenever your prototype uh, uh, is built, right, remember very important thing: you should actually build it quickly. That's first. Second, learn one thing. Third, stay silent while users actually interact. Then there are two more things. Okay. The fourth distinction is actually form. The prototype is anything that allows another person to experience your idea. Notice the word anything, right? It could be a paper sketch, a role play, a cardboard model, a clickable Canva screen, or even a conversation. What it is not is a business plan, maybe a PowerPoint presentation, a specification document, or lines of code. Why? Because those explanation will not be that helpful. Okay, they may be too wordy. How you articulate or present using a PPT is something that you'll have to decide, because PPT can also be a good way to present, but not in many cases, right? So how you explain the idea, that's really important. Right. So think about the founders of, let's say, Zappos. And this is a very classic example we actually use. So one of the world's largest online shoe retailers. Before building warehouses or sophisticated software, founder Nick Swinburne, what he did was he photographed shoes in local stores and listed them online. Right. When someone ordered a pair, he simply bought the shoes from the store and shipped them himself. There was no inventory system or logistics network, right? Think about it. So which means that he did not have to actually invest a lot in keeping the inventory of shoes. Okay, the prototype wasn't the website. It was the experiment to answer one question: will people buy shoes online? The answer was yes. And that insight led to $1 billion, company. Then the fifth distinction is completeness. Okay. A prototype is only the few moments that matter most, typically the 3 to 5 key interactions. It's not every feature, every screen, every exception, or every tiny detail. Imagine you're designing a food delivery app. You don't need to create restaurant registration, payment history, referral programs, customer support, and dozens of other menu screens. Instead, build only the critical journey: selecting food, placing the order, and receiving confirmation. If those moments work, you have already learned something valuable. So remember, innovation happens by reducing uncertainty, not by increasing complexity. And these are the two things that I think you'll have to take it with you. So ask yourself before building, what is the smallest version of this idea that someone can experience and react to? If you can answer that question, you're thinking like a designer. And that's exactly the mindset we will use throughout this prototype building session. So let's understand this using these two pictures that you actually see. Right. Look at first the left hand side. These are all prototypes. The first one that you see is a handwritten screen. The second one that you see on the top left, that is a cardboard model. Then you have a Lego mock-up you see at the bottom, right? Those colorful. Then there's something called a storyboard. Then there's role play, right? None of them they look impressive. Okay, and that's okay, that's fine, because their purpose is not to impress anyone. Their purpose is to get feedback. Now look at the right hand side. Okay, here is where we have a polished mobile app, okay, working software, a detailed business plan, and a professional presentation. Imagine spending 3 months building that app, hiring developers, spending lakhs of rupees, and then finally, showing it to users. What if they say, this isn't what I wanted. I don't understand how to use it. This doesn't solve my problem, or even worse, I would never use it. When you get such kind of responses, at that point, changing the product becomes really expensive, time consuming, and frustrating. That's exactly why prototypes exist. So you may have some questions at this point. Like for example, I gave the Drew Huston's Dropbox example, where he actually built the whole system of storing a photograph, saving it in cloud, right? Obviously, he would have definitely coded it. Okay, but the point here is not that. Okay, the point here is, look at what kind of product you're actually building. What's the kind of investment it actually takes? Okay, the software tools, money, time, everything, right? What could be the cheapest version which actually saves all of these important things, right, and still be able to get feedback from you? Okay, you will have to decide what will work for your startup or your product development cycle at the beginning. Okay, so all I'm saying is, instead of spending months building the final product, you spend 30 minutes creating something rough, show it to users and ask, right, is this solving your problem? If they don't like it, that's actually good news, right? Because you have learned in 30 minutes, true, before investing months of work and thousands or even millions of rupees. So think of a prototype as a conversation starter, not a finished product. The goal isn't to hear wow, this looks beautiful. The goal is to hear honest comments like, this part is confusing, I expected something different, the feature doesn't help me. Those comments are pure gold, because they help you improve before it's too late. So remember this simple principle: don't build to prove your idea is right. Okay, build just enough to find out whether you're wrong. That's the real purpose of a prototype. Okay, so we will now talk about the prototype mindset shift, because so far we have understood what prototype is, and in fact what it is not. Okay, um before we pick up our pens to start building, there's one final thing that you'll have to definitely change your mindset, because design thinking, if you look at it, it's not just a process, it's a different way of thinking. Okay, let's start by asking a simple question. How many of you like showing unfinished work to others? It's a very simple question. Most of us will not, right? We don't want. We have spent years in schools, colleges, and workplaces where rough work was criticized and polished work was always rewarded. At least that's how I grew up. No criticism, but that's the way it was. Naturally, we wait until something looks perfect because before asking for feedback. But today, I want you to do exactly the opposite. In design thinking, unfinished is not a mistake. In fact, there's a way to unfinish also. Okay, right. It's the correct stage to be in. So I want to give you, so let's say you're building a car. I mean, if that is the end product, you can't just design a wheel and say, hey, this is what I'm working on. Come on, it will not be able to explain to you, because if you're building a car, all you basically try to mean that somebody can sit comfortably and the machine can take you from one place to the other, right? You may not show the top roof of the car, or it may not have doors, but it'll definitely have its chassis and at least one seat, and somebody can sit comfortably. Think about it. Okay, so a wheel versus this kind of explanation. So that's the whole point. Okay, then so I think I have answered this. So IDEO, let me give you an example. The global design company that popularized design thinking, in fact, follows a simple philosophy: fail early to succeed sooner. Okay, the earlier you discover what's wrong, the cheaper and easier it is to improve. Another important shift is this: never explain your prototype before someone uses it. Yes, if a user struggles to understand what to do, don't jump to into rescue them. And that confusion is incredibly valuable, because it reveals exactly where your design needs improvement. Also, because you have to make it intuitive, right? Also, remember, when someone criticizes your prototype, they're not criticizing you, they're helping you make the idea stronger. So treat every piece of feedback, good or bad, howsoever, okay, as a gift, as a reward. Feel very happy. And finally, don't wait for perfection. If your prototype can answer your biggest question, even if it's drawn on paper with sticky notes, it's ready to test. As you build today, keep one thought in mind, right? We are not here to create a perfect product. We are here to learn as quickly as possible. That is the prototype mindset, and it's what separates innovators from perfectionists. Okay, now that we have developed the right prototype mindset, let's answer an important question here. How detailed should your prototype actually be? Many first time innovators believe that a better prototype means more beautiful prototype, right? In reality, that's not true. Of course, we have already understood that part. So in design thinking, we use a concept called fidelity. Okay, fidelity, sincerity, honesty. These could be the actual meaning, but let's understand how it is related to prototyping. So fidelity simply means how closely your prototype resembles the final product. Okay, it is a deliberate design choice, not a measure of quality, intelligence, or effort. I think this definition will now make things clearer, right? Let's look at three levels. And of course, it's very simple to remember. You have the first low fidelity, then you have mid fidelity, and then you have high fidelity. Okay. Now let's start with low fidelity. These are hand-drawn sketches, sticky notes, okay, paper screens, rough cardboard models. So let's say your end product is a mobile phone and you're sketching it out. Of course, your sketch is far, far, far away from the actual mobile phone. But still, you will be able to see, you can understand, you can imagine. There are a lot of things you can do, right? So if you look at the low fidelity model, you can ask a simple question: what are we testing here? That's one simple thing. That is this idea moving in the right direction? That's exactly why every team in today's session will begin with a low fidelity prototype. Very simple. Take a piece of paper and do that. It's fast, it's inexpensive, and incredibly easy to modify. In fact, there are a lot of tools available online, and you can use them. Okay. Next comes the mid fidelity. Now, I hope you are able to understand. Right. Your prototype starts looking more structured. You might use Canva or Figma to create, clean screens, or let's say simple clickable wireframes, right? And at this stage, you are no longer asking, is this a good idea? Instead, you're asking, can users complete the journey without my help? Okay. And finally, we have high fidelity, and this includes, of course, polished interfaces, animations, real interactions, or working software. So, in my opinion, the Dropbox example that I gave you, and you should actually watch that video. uh, you will understand that it was high fidelity still, right? Because the end product was not built, but he was able to demonstrate what's actually happening. So at this stage, you're testing small details, button placements, colors, wording, response time, and I'm giving you in the context of a digital prototype. So here's a something very important. High fidelity does not mean high learning. Research from Nielsen Norman Group, one of the world's leading UX, that is user experience research organizations, consistently recommends starting with paper prototypes because users focus on the idea rather than visual polish. When a prototype looks too perfect, people often hesitate to criticize it and valuable feedback is lost. Yes, this is a very important observation in learning. Right, it will be very hard for you to criticize or it's looking so stunning, so good, but actually it's not solving your problem. So that's about an architect, I'll say. Before constructing a building, they begin with rough sketches, not expensive marble models. Those sketches allow changes while they're still, easy and inexpensive. So innovation works exactly the same way. So as you build today, remember this simple principle: start rough, learn fast, improve faster. Because the goal isn't actually to build the best looking prototype; it's to build the one that teaches you the most. Okay, so before we start drawing our prototype, we need to answer one very important question. What exactly are we going to build, right? So many teams make this mistake of opening Canva or opening up a marker and immediately designing the screen they find most exciting. But that's not how great products are built. Okay, the best designers begin with something called user's journey and not the interface. I hope now you can collect something: user's journey. So a user journey or a user journey map is simply the sequence of moments a user experiences while interacting with your solution. Now you can think of a product which is literally not a product. It's actually a service. Okay. You enter a particular room, there's somebody who is interacting with you, and then you go and then you pay money and then you come back. Think about that. That's a user journey, right? You go to a nice restaurant to have a meal. Uh, right. It's a very beautiful service. Okay. So I hope the definition is clear, right? Instead of trying to design everything, we identify the first 3 to 5 moments that really matter is the entry point. So this is the user's first encounter with your solution. Ask yourself, will the user immediately understand what this is and why it matters to them? You can get one chance to create a good first impression. Next comes the core action. This is the heart of your idea. What is the one thing your solution is designed to help the user do? More importantly, can they complete that action without anyone explaining it? If they can't, you have discovered an opportunity to improve your design. After that comes the response. Once the user takes the action, what happens? Do they clearly understand the result? Does the feedback feel useful, reassuring, or motivating? A confusing response can make even a good solution feel broken. Finally, there's the next step. After completing the task, does the user naturally want to continue, or does the experience feel complete? Not every journey needs a next step, but it's worth considering. Now, here's the golden rule on this slide: don't map the entire product, map only the moments needed to test your riskiest assumption. For example, if you're designing an AI career guidance platform, you don't need to prototype profile settings, notifications, payment screens, or let's say FAQs. If your biggest uncertainty is whether students trust the AI recommendations, then your journey should focus only on discovering the platform, asking a career question, receiving guidance, and deciding whether to continue. Remember, a prototype is not a miniature version of your entire product. It's a focused experiment designed to answer one important question. That's exactly what we will build next. Okay, I'll say excellent. We now know what to build and which moments to include. It's time to get our hands moving. Our first activity, in fact, is to create a paper prototype. Now, some of you might be wondering, why are we using paper when we have laptops, AI, Canva, Figma? I told you, earlier also. It's actually a fair question. The simple answer is paper helps you think faster than software. When you're working on paper, you are not worrying about fonts, colors, alignments, animations, anything else. Your entire focus remains on solving the user's problem. If something doesn't work, you can redraw it in seconds. That freedom is exactly why companies like IDEO and the Stanford Design School continue to use paper prototypes even for digital products. Let's look at the materials you will actually need. Nothing very expensive, just a few A4 sheets, markers, sticky notes, scissors, and tape, or let's say a glue stick. Okay. So if you have index cards, colored paper, or printed images, they can certainly help, but they're completely optional. Now, notice what's listed under not needed. You don't need a laptop. You don't need, design software. You don't need photographs. Okay. And you definitely should not spend time searching for fancy materials. In fact, if something takes more than 30 seconds to find, skip it and start building. Remember, today we are testing an idea, not an artistic skill. I have seen some of the most effective, prototypes drawn with simple stick figures and handwritten labels. Yet they generate incredibly valuable feedback because they clearly communicate the experience. Okay, so don't aim for something beautiful. Aim for something understandable. Over the next few minutes, forget perfection, pick up your marker, and start building your idea into the real world. Because from this point onward, learning happens by building, not by discussing. Okay. So now that everyone has materials ready, I guess, let's follow a simple four-step, process to build a prototype. Don't worry about, making it perfect. As I mentioned, just follow these steps one at a time. Step number one is to sketch the key, user journey. Go back to the journey map we created earlier. Select the 3 to 4, most important moments, not every possible screen or feature. Every moment becomes one screen or, one screen in your prototype, something like that. For example, if you're designing, let's say, a medicine reminder app, your journey might include receiving a reminder, confirming the medicine was taken, and viewing today's progress. That's enough to test your idea. Second one is draw each touch point. Okay. Use one sheet of paper for each moment. If buttons, let's say messages or option changes, use sticky note. So you can actually replace them very quickly during testing instead of redrawing the entire page. This flexibility is one of the biggest advantages of paper prototyping. Step number 3 is to add the one critical detail. Don't spend equal effort on every screen. Instead, ask yourself, where is my biggest uncertainty? Okay, that's the screen that deserves the most attention. If you're unsure whether users understand your onboarding process, make that screen more detailed. In fact, that's always good. So if you're testing whether users trust your AI recommendation, focus your effort there. Everything else can remain simple. And finally, step 4 is to write your testing script. This is just 3 simple sentences. Okay. First, describe the user situation. Second, tell them what tasks to perform. And third, identify what your team wants to learn from the interaction. We'll explore the testing script in detail, but don't skip it. A prototype without a testing plan is simply a drawing it doesn't generate meaningful learning. So remember these 4 steps. Map the journey, draw the moments, detail the biggest risk, and write the testing script. Look at this photograph. I think it is self-explanatory. You can see how I explained you the 4 steps and how they are actually done. Take a moment to understand this and you can go ahead. Okay, you can in fact pause and redo for yourself. Right. So before I let you start building, I want to save you from 2 mistakes I see in almost every design thinking workshop, right? And this is in fact for all the facilitators as well. If they would like to facilitate this session, it's very important for them to you know uh, take into consideration. The first mistake is over polishing one screen. Some teams spend almost 20 minutes perfecting their hero page, choosing colors, aligning text, adjusting icons, making everything look beautiful. And then time runs out. They never build the most important part, the interaction part. Okay. Remember, users don't tell you whether your headline is perfectly aligned, they tell you whether your idea solves their problem. So here's my first rule, right? If you have been working on the same screen for more than 5 minutes, just stop it. You can move on always, and you can always improve the visuals later. Right now, we are testing the experience, not winning a design competition. The second mistake is building a poster instead of a prototype. A poster is something people look at, a prototype is something people use. There's a huge difference. A prototype must ask the user to do something: tap a button, choose an option, swipe to the next screen, pick between two alternatives, make a decision. If the user simply stands there, looking at your design, you're not collecting behavior, you're collecting opinions. So whenever I'm reviewing your work today, I will ask just one question: what does the tester do next? If your team can answer that immediately, you're building a prototype. If not, you're probably building a poster. So throughout today's activity, keep these 2 reminders in mind. Don't spend too much time making it beautiful. Spend your time, making it usable. Okay. Now that your paper prototype is already ready, don't open Canva, just yet. First, write the copy. Many people design first and write later. That usually leads to cluttered layouts and weak messaging. Instead, let the words shape the design. So you'll find a ready-made prompt on this slide. Paste it into Chat GPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever you're using, and simply tell the AI what your solution is, who your target user is, what problem you're solving. The AI will generate 5 things. It is going to generate a headline, a 3 sentence explanation, a call to action, a testimonial, or 3 product names. And this gives you a strong first draft in less than a minute. But remember, AI writes first drafts, not final drafts. Okay, read every line critically. Ask yourself, would my user actually use this? If not, then write it. Your users are real people. The language should sound natural, not artificial. Once you're happy with the copy, then we'll move into Canva and turn them into words into a digital prototype. So I think this is perhaps easier. Let me show you. There's one example that I've already used. Let me just share it with you. So you can see how things are, and that is how it actually works. Okay. Yeah. So you can read all the 5 sentences. I hope that's clear to everybody. Okay. So let me go back to the slide presentation. Perfect. So digital prototype basically is the next part, and this is really exciting. Right. Now that you have already generated your, text using the AI, right? We are going to convert our idea into a digital prototype. Remember, this is not your final product. It's simply a cleaner version of your paper prototype that users interact with. Okay. Keep it simple by following these 5 sections. You can start with hero, that is one bold headline and one strong image or background. If you have to explain your headline, it's strong enough, right? Now you have to show the problem. Use one image and one sentence that helps users immediately recognize their pain. So don't introduce the solution yet. Okay. Then explain the solution. You can use the AI generated 3 sentence description and add one simple diagram that shows how your idea works. Keep it visual and easy to understand. After that, show what happens next. Create a simple 3-step journey, which is what the user does, what they receive, and what changes as a result. Finally, finish with a very clear call to action and one short testimonial. If you're still deciding on a product name, ask your tester which name they should find most memorable. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there are a lot of tools available. One is Canva, very good for presentation, posters. Right. You can go ahead with that. In fact, you can use Figma. In product development world, people use Figma a lot, right? Where you can sketch those wireframes, how the buttons will look like. When you click something, what will happen next? You can create all those pages, right? Whichever you're comfortable with. And one final reminder, don't design for beauty, design for feedback. Okay. So far we have built, screen-based prototype. Now, here is something very important. Not every solution should be prototyped as an app or a website. I'm sure you will agree with this. Some ideas are services. I gave you one example. Some involve conversations. Others are physical products in those cases. So different prototyping methods are there. Okay. The first is Wizard of Oz, right? Um, Here, the user believes they're interacting with an AI or an automated system, but a human is actually responding behind the scenes. And it's an excellent way to test AI assistants, chatbots, or recommendation systems before writing a single line of code. The second one is the role play. Instead of designing screens, your team actually acts out the experience. This is ideal for testing services such as hospital check-ins, customer support, or classroom interactions. The third one is a storyboard. Think of it as a comic strip, right? That shows the user's journey over time. It's particularly useful when you're testing long-term behavior or emotional experiences rather than a single interaction. And the fourth one is the physical mock-up. Like you can use a cardboard, paper, foam. Right, you have 3D printers today, in fact, to show how the actual product would look like. Right, or any available material to build a rough model. And this works well for wearables, hardware products, or physical spaces where users need to touch and experience the idea. No matter which method you choose, always ask yourself one question: what is the one thing I need the user to do so I can learn what matters most? Okay, and here is what you can actually see. Right, the first one, the second one, the third one, storyboard, and of course the physical mockup. Okay, so let's move to the next. So your prototype is actually ready, but before you test it, you need a testing script. And then you may ask why? Because the biggest mistake during testing is explaining the prototype. The moment you start explaining it, you influence the user's behavior. So a good testing script has 3 parts. First is the scenario, second one is the task, and third one is the learning question. So a scenario will set the context in one sentence, helps the user imagine the situation, but doesn't reveal how your solution works. The second one is the task. So tell the user what to do, right? Not how to do it. Keep it simple and focused on your riskiest assumption. And the third, which is the learning question, and this is in fact only for your team. The tester never sees it. It reminds you what you're trying to learn. For example, can the user complete, let's say, this task without help? Or does the user trust this feature? A testing script will always keep every team member consistent and ensures you are collecting evidence, not opinions. So remember, don't guide, don't defend, and don't explain. Now, let's see what a finished prototype actually looks like, right? And here is one example that you actually see, and this follows a very simple example. There's this boy, Aryan, is a first year student who often leaves lectures feeling confused but hesitates to ask for help. And notice that the team hasn't built at the entire app. They have actually selected just 5 moments that matter the most. Now, why these 5 moments? Because together they test the team's biggest assumption. And that assumption is, will a struggling student feel safe enough to, open up to an AI companion? Now, every screen is designed to answer one part of that question. Will Aryan notice the QR code or something like, will the message feel welcoming, or will he type something personal? Or let's say, will the AI's response feel empathetic rather than robotic? And finally, after the interaction, would he come back? If the answer to any of these is no, the team has learned exactly what needs to change without writing code or building a full product. That's the power of prototyping. So don't build the whole solution, build only enough to answer your most important question. You can see it yourself. This is how it is. And this was in fact built using Canva. So what you do is go to canva.com, right? Sign it up just like normal sign up, and there'll be a plus button. Just click the plus right on the extreme left hand side top, perhaps. Okay. And you can open up the presentation, right? And then you can just put a prompt. What prompt will you do? You remember those 5 things that got generated using your AI, those questions, right? So there was a header. So you just paste all that, and these are the 5 things that you will actually get it. Okay. For example, the first, the indigo color, AI that simplifies your study, right? It's a kind of headline that's actually coming up. Okay, fine. So now let's look at the final pieces that complete the prototype. First is the AI generated copy. Notice how it's short, simple, and written in the user's prototype. A clear headline, a call to action, a testimonial, a few product name options, all that. The second part is the testing script, and it has got 3 parts: the scenario, the task, the learning question, right? Notice the learning question isn't like, did the user like it? In fact, it's very specific. Will the user share something personal, or will they close the prototype? That's what makes the testing meaningful. And here is the facilitator, assessment checklist. Before we move into any kind of testing session, we have to do a final quality check. Ask yourself these 6 questions. Does your paper prototype show 3 to 5 key moments, right? Or is it just one screen? Is your riskiest assumption clearly represented? Can someone use your prototype without you explaining it? Have you written all 3 parts of the testing script? Does your digital prototype contain, let's say, real copy, not placeholder text? And finally, have you saved or photographed your prototype so it's ready for testing? If the answer to any of these is no, spend a few more minutes fixing it now. One final rule, and it's a critical one: do not begin testing until every team has written a testing script. So let's quickly, recap what we have actually learned today. The first takeaway is that a prototype is a question, not an answer. Second one is build to think and not to present. The third one is rough is right, which means a simple prototype encourages honest feedback, while a polished one often makes people hesitate to criticize it. The fourth one is let AI help with the words so you can focus on the experience. Finally, test one riskiest assumption at a time, because you don't need to validate the entire solution in one session. Focus on the biggest uncertainty and learn from it. In the next session, we will put these prototypes in front of real users and learn how to take meaningful feedback. Okay. So congratulations, you've completed your first design thinking prototype. It was all, you have created a paper prototype, a digital prototype, and a testing script. That's exactly what product teams use before investing time and money in development. Okay. Now, before moving to the next question, take 1 minute to reflect on the three questions. First one is, when did you feel the urge to make your prototype perfect? Which part of your user journey are you still most uncertain about? And finally, can a complete stranger use your prototype without any guidance from you? Remember, prototyping doesn't reduce uncertainty, but testing does. So, great work for today. I'll see you in the next session. Thank you for watching.